Alright, hey guys, welcome back to another video, and today we are gonna be looking at a scenario where Czechia forms an empire. Yep, that's right, Czechia. Who would have guessed? So, Czechia, a little bit tired of being bullied by the bigger nations around them, specifically these 4, 5, I can't count. I mean, they weren't really bullied by Ukraine, but I mean, they were definitely bullied by these 4. But they were tired and they decided, let's bully them back. So they were gonna do exactly that. But as you can see, they're not that big of a nation. So we have to do something about that first, right, Czechia? And Czechia knew it. They decided we need to be bigger before we can take on these guys. So let's do that. Sorry, Czechia. Sorry, Slovakia. Yeah, you're not gonna survive long. I could make this bell like super long, but like I'm gonna pick up the pace a little. But yeah, Czechia basically easily invades Slovakia, who was not prepared for any invasion from its neutral neighbor of Czechia. And that didn't turn out well for them. So let's look at the peace treaty. Alright, and that is basically the treaty. Yeah, they annexed all of it. It's a small country compared to Czechia, so they were gonna annex all of it because they wanted it. Now, they were still not strong enough. They might have reformed Czechoslovakia now, but they are not strong enough yet. They have to bully some other neighbors first. And who better to bully than the one that controlled them for a very long time? That's right, Austria, you're on the chopping block now, mate. And the Czechoslovakian troops march into Austria, not meeting a lot of resistance, mostly because Austria's army is really small. I don't think they have that big of a standing army. But yeah, Czechia having a very big army now. Let's say like 300k men or something like that, yeah. Let's say that. And yeah, they were basically steamrolling them now. Now, Austria is gonna hold on a little bit longer than Slovakia did, because mountain. But yeah, it's not gonna last that long for Austria. Especially because they just encircled the capital. Uh-oh, that ain't great for them. But yeah, they basically took over the capital, and there we go. Now they continued the rest of the invasion, moving through the valleys and also flying over the mountains with their airplanes and dropping soldiers off on random mountain tops, because yes, that's what they do. Trust me. And so they moved forward and forward until eventually Austria surrendered. Now let's look at the peace treaty. Alright, and that is a peace treaty. As we can see, Czechia, Slovakia did not take all of Austria. They left the little panhandle alive, and well, honestly, I feel like the panhandle would join Germany, but we're not gonna do that for purposes. Let's say it manages to stay independent somehow. But now Czechia, or Czechoslovakia, if you want to call it that, is looking a lot stronger. It's also looking a lot more like Austria-Hungary, but we're gonna ignore that fact. But is it strong enough to take on Germany, Poland, or France? Or in this case, Ukraine also, because now they border Ukraine. The answer is no. They have no navy to fight off France. Germany has not a bigger military, but oops. They do not have a bigger military, but they do have the landmass and the factory capabilities of getting a much bigger army very fast And Czechia just doesn't have that at this moment. Poland is a lot stronger than Germany, so also, yeah. Czechia does not stand much chance against them. But that doesn't mean they stand no chance against another country. They're going after the big old enemy of Kosovo. No, it's not Kosovo. Kosovo is here. What am I talking about? Of Slovenia. Yep, Slovenia. Not Kosovo. Kosovo is all the way over here. This is Kosovo. My goodness. Speech problems, man. But basically, yeah, it was over very fast. Mostly because compared Slovenia compared to this country is basically like, yeah, it doesn't stand much of a chance now, does it? It would be the same as Italy invading it. Like, they probably have a similar standing army now. Especially with Austria integrated into the new empire. And as we can see, they were right. The country did not last long. And they basically annexed all of it, as you can see. Now, they needed some other targets as well, right? Because they couldn't just leave that up. This wasn't strong enough either. They barely have sea access. So, where are they gonna go after next? They could go after Hungary, but Hungary might provide some troubles, especially right now. They could go after Croatia, but that would also probably be problematic. At least if they go alone into the war. But as we know historically, someone else wanted a lot of land from it too. Isn't it right, Italy? Nah, I'm just joking. Italy's not going to join the war on their side. No one is. Nobody of these like them. They're all laughing at them. They're like, ha 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 ha. Even by the fact that it got a lot bigger, they're just still laughing at them. So Czechoslovakia decided to test their ultimate power and go after Hungary. It was a lot more fighting, as you can tell. The border did not move a lot, and they were struggling. Hungary has a big army, as far as I can remember. I have not checked the recent data, actually, but let's just say for the fact of this scenario with this existing right next door that they probably would have had a bigger army than IRL. But let's just assume that to assume, okay? So Austria, Czechoslovak Union, let's call it that, has started its invasion of Hungary, as you can tell. But Hungary was not just going to lie down and take it. They pushed back and they were invading into the north. Right into Slovakia. Uh-oh, that's not good. So Slovakia, Czechia, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it Czechoslovakia again. But they decided to ramp up volunteers and and they decided to ramp up conscription. That's the word I was looking for. Crazy. So they managed to push back Hungary with a lot of casualties. But they managed to push back and push deeper into Hungary. Now, Hungary wasn't their main target, and they honestly did not want a lot of land from it. Hungary has always been a little bit out of the way of Czechia, even when it was Bohemia, right? Because Bohemia was like right here. This was Bohemia. It was basically Czechia plus this area of Germany, of Poland. But yeah, Czechia continues its invasion of Hungary, managing to even push close to the capital. Now Hungary is gonna call for some allies, and they're not gonna find any. Why? Because Czechia, Czechoslovakia, if you wanna call it that, has promised to stay out of these three countries. And that's basically all they border. They don't border Ukraine anymore, and they border Croatia, sure, but Croatia doesn't want to help. So Hungary stands alone, and Budapest was captured. And that made the fall of Hungary, as now the Hungarian army, losing the chain of command, didn't know what to do. They kept fighting, sure, but they were weaker and not unified anymore. Until the eventual split happened here, and both sides surrendered. Let's look at peace treaty. As you can see, they did not take a lot of of Hungary. Oh my. And that's good, because they would realistically not take all of it. That would create too much division internally, and just like Austria, they didn't want to do that anyway. They had no interest in bordering Serbia, or Hungary? No. Or Romania. Their interests were up north, not down south. But they had to go down south to gain enough power to stop to go up north. That's kind of the downside of being balkanized. If you're split up like this, you have a lot of weaker nations, and one powerful nation like this can take advantage of that. But that's not the point of the video. We have one more target in the Balkans for the Czechoslovakia Union. It was Croatia. Uh-oh, they didn't see that coming. Now I have to click all the islands. Now Croatia, it knew an invasion was coming. I also painted on the wrong layer. But Croatia was prepared for an invasion from the Czechoslovak Union. It just never knew when. And it managed to push up a little bit here and there, especially here near the capital, which was good for them, but also not good for them. Because Czechoslovakia cut off this little piece of the country. And it easily took it. Yeah, that wasn't gonna last so long for them. And now the Czechoslovakian troops were also arriving all around. Now they weren't gonna just rush in, even if they could, because they likely now have a standing army of like 500 or 600,000 soldiers. I don't know. You can make up the numbers as you go. But they will continue the invasion slowly, grinding against the Croatians. The Croatians, however, were losing the islands. Despite having a navy, the islands were scared that they would get bombed by the Czechoslovak Air Force. Wow, difficult words. So they surrendered immediately. That wasn't great, and it helped capitulate. Well, not capitulate the country, but split the country into two, as these islands fell too. Now, the navy was struggling a lot more. They didn't have a big navy. They had Slovenia's navy, but how big is that really with such a little spot of access? So sure, they were struggling, but eventually they managed to land and take it. This left a lot of problems for Croatia. It was now basically landlocked. Yeah. And its capital was under threat. I think that's a bigger problem than being landlocked, but And sure enough, the capital was captured. It didn't take long, and the rest of Croatia also surrendered. Let's look at the peace treaty. Now, luckily for Czechia, luckily for Croatia, Czechia did not want the lot. They just wanted the bigger coastline. I mean, they already had a big coastline. Croatia already had a big coastline. And yeah, it lost a little bit of coastline. But it's okay. They didn't lose too much. But now what is gonna happen? They don't have a lot of space to move anymore. They could go after Ukraine. But Ukraine only has to defend this little piece of area, and that would probably end not so great for them. They could go after Italy or Germany. Now again, don't forget what I said. Germany, big industrial capability. Italy also, but they're slower, I guess. I don't know. How would you pronounce it? So, that doesn't really matter anyway. As they went after them anyway. And we saw the first big war since the start of this video. And it was gonna go very well for Czechia. Czechia is basically destroying the army of Italy. Yeah, Italy is struggling. Don't take this out of context. It's not real. Okay. All nations that are meant to create an empire are buffed like crazy in this video. In these videos. My bad. So obviously IRL, they would never been able to do this. In this scenario they can, because yes. But Italy, feeling kind of embarrassed at the fact that they're losing so much, split in half. Yeah, that's right. Half the country down south wanted the war over, so they surrendered. The north, however, wanted to continue the war and wanted to beat Czechia. But as you can see how that's going. Yeah, they might have wanted to surrender. It's not going so great for Italy. Especially because they now have to cut out here as well. Because the Italian forces down south were moving up as well because they wanted to surrender. Yeah. And so the two fronts met. Taking over this little tiny city. No, I'm just kidding. It's an accidental encounter. Anyway, it's also not a city, it's a microstate. But yeah, they were basically now approaching the Vatican. I probably placed Rome in a very odd position. It was very hard to see it on the map correctly. Anyway. Basically, Italy is dead. And sure enough, I'm right. Italy surrendered. Italy surrendered. So let's look at the peace treaty. Okay, in all honesty, they did not do that bad. Italy could have been punished much harder, but they weren't because half of the country surrendered. Yeah, they basically got them to thank for this. But yeah, so this is what the new empire looks like. That's very good for an empire, in my opinion. They probably have a lot of land that they never had historically. I mean, depends on what empire you want to look at, I guess. But they were not satisfied yet. They still had 3 nations to take land from. Like I said, they were not happy with what happened in the past. These 3 nations took land from them, but only, well, I mean, technically they didn't really take it. Was more like, yeah, it was more like the Soviet Union took it, but it was also technically not, it was technically always Ukrainian, but I'm not here to debate that stuff. I'm here to do mapping. So, who's the next target? Poland? No, Poland is still too strong. So, Germany it is. I'm not gonna color in all those tiny islands, come on. There, that's the majority. So the official war began. And unfortunately for Czechia, this war was not gonna go so well. Germany was storming across the mountains, almost like they were preparing to do it anyway. Luckily for them, Germany had been stupid. Okay, there we go. I fix it. Luckily for Czechia, Germany, stupid. They left their south completely undefended, and that forced them to retreat on this front, relieving a lot of pressure on the capital and allowing Czechia to push back even more. Like I said, they've been buffed. All Germany probably would have steamrolled them by now, but well, maybe not. But Czechia goes further and further and further, taking over many major cities already because of Bavaria. You know, Bavaria is very populated. But as they moved across, the Germans finally managed to regroup. And the front stalled on this side, looking a lot like this. I mean, technically it's probably a lot more like jagged and rough than smooth, but like, you know what I mean. But they also started to invade up here, and Germany decided to completely go on the defensive. Unfortunately for them, Czechia was recruiting many people, and they were overwhelming Germany with sheer manpower and probably massive equipment issues. But they now controlled about this much of Germany. Uh-oh, that's not good. But Germany decided to continue fighting in the hopes that they might be able to still turn the tide. But they probably weren't because, well, they just lost their biggest area. They lost most of Bavaria. They lost basically Bavaria. So now the front looked like this. Well, that's not great for Germany. Germany did manage to push back a little bit here near the capital, but that was not going to go great either. And it basically created this. It relieved the capital, sure, but yeah, the rest of Germany was being steamrolled. And so Germany, under the promise that they would not lose too much land against Czechia, was surrendering over to them. Let's look at the peace treaty. And so these are the new borders. They didn't take much of Germany. They did take a lot of good land though. But they didn't take much as promised. Now there was only one neighbor left. Well, technically two. Poland and Ukraine. These two didn't bully Czechoslovakia as much, but Poland definitely bullied them a little bit as they had taken land during the partitions in World War II. And Czechia did not like that, so they declared war. And Poland, unprepared, yeah. It was a slow invasion, and they probably would not win. But luckily for Poland, they had an ally. They had a very strong ally. They had France. And France was coming over with the boats. They launched a naval invasion into what would you call this region of Czechoslovakia, of the new Czechoslovakia Union? I don't know, actually. It was part of Croatia. So maybe it's called Czech Croatia? I don't know. Come up with a name for it. I don't know. But the French landed there and began to quickly gain ground. This relief, well, yeah, that invasion gave relief to Poland, allowing them to push back. Unfortunately for the French, they were also pushed back. Just not by a lot, but still by enough. And Czechoslovakia began massive conscription. Wow, words. And so they basically began the full invasion of Poland. Invading many Polish cities and former territories that they once owned back in the 1400s. And for the first time in a while, they managed to touch the sea. They managed to connect to the sea. Fortunately for them, it wasn't the sea. I mean, they had access to the Adriatic, so although Italy's navy is probably holding them at gunpoint there right now, right? Because of what happened and such. But Poland was losing ground heavily. Luckily for them, France was trying their best. Something that couldn't be said earlier. But they were gaining massive grounds in the newly occupied territories of Italy and Croatia. As you can see, they were killing. I can't say that on YouTube. As you can see, they were destroying a lot of the enemies, and even taking hold of the islands. Because the Czechia navy isn't really strong at the moment. But nonetheless, Poland was definitely falling. Despite France's attempts to alleviate the pain, it actually only made it worse. As now, Czechia was spearheading right for the capital. And they were right outside it. But Poland couldn't spare any troops to defend Warsaw. The other troops were busy fighting already stretched out thin. And so the fall of Poland began. Now, France joined the war to help them, but not to actually defeat them. But the offensive continued as French soldiers probably flooded the area now. After the successful campaign down here, almost managing to cut off the entire south of the country and cut them almost off from the Adriatic Sea. Fortunately for them, it didn't matter much because they had sea access here now. But it didn't matter much as the French soldiers didn't seem to help much as they just talked about peace. Because that's what they're good at. No, I'm just joking. But they didn't seem to help much anyway. As, yeah. Czechia seemed a little bit too strong. It's almost like they were using tech that the other countries didn't have yet. Like the ability to walk on water, as you can see. Man mapping issues. I really need to fix that actually, but yeah, as you can see, they basically landed pretty decent invasions, but now they were all cut off into this low corner. Poland did manage, together with the French that were captured now, manage a little offensive, liberating little bits of the country. I mean, they liberated, or they're still occupying a lot of good stuff, but the liberation didn't last long, as the soldiers moved forward and captured Warsaw. That's not great, as Poland was now officially falling, and it couldn't stop it anymore, causing them to surrender to Czechia. Now, France, on the other hand, it occupied this area, but it didn't feel like continuing the fight and said, yo, we'll surrender. So let's look at the peace treaty. And now only one target remained. As you can see, they didn't take too much of Poland again. They took a little bit of the historical land that they used to have here, and they took this part. I don't know why they took that part, they just wanted it. I mean, it was to help the invasion of Ukraine. But yeah. That's basically what the country looks like now. It's a very weird shape. I don't know how I got to this shape. But it's okay. As the invasion of Ukraine was wow, speaking. As the invasion of Ukraine was efficiently going to start. Now, normally they wouldn't do it, but yeah. They basically easily managed to take over this area as it quickly surrenders. Now, the problem was, they knew taking too much would cause other nations to start backstabbing them again. So, they sat down with Ukraine, said, come on man, we want a peace deal. And Ukraine said, you know what? Okay, we'll do it. So they went down, sat at the table, had some beers, laughed, something like that, and came to an accord. And so these were the official new borders of the empire. What do you guys think? Do you like the borders? Are they very ugly here? They probably are. And that's gonna stay that way. Because I don't know why. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Let me know if you got any suggestions, by the way. See you next time!